The FiFine Tank1 is an XLR cardioid dynamic microphone that currently comes in at $130. Currently. I would say that one of the biggest competitors that the FiFine Tank1 is taking on, or tanking on, Tom Buck would be so proud right now, is the Rode Podmic that I have right here, and it goes for $100. So this is $30 more expensive, and I totally understand if you're a little bit off-put by the price, considering that FiFine usually undercuts the competition's price and has never, ever been above the competition's price. It's kind of odd for them. But the Tank1 does have a few things up its sleeve that the Rode Podmic doesn't have, and I'm just going to say it right now, the Tank1 does sound better, period.
The Tank1 does sound better.
Out of the box, just plugging it in, I think it is a superior sound. But the Podmic was one of the first, not the first, but one of the first to come out with an amazing build quality and give you a broadcast dynamic look for under $100. But I would say about a year after my initial review of the Podmic, there had been products that had come out that were about the same price that had surpassed the sound quality. But then came the Rodecasters and the option to just change the DSP and sculpt the sound whichever way you want. But for a lot of people that did buy the Podmic that didn't buy a Rodecaster, you might be looking at getting a different sound, and maybe this is it. But just to talk about the differences between these two mics, and there really aren't many physically, the sound is different, but there is a high-pass filter switch and a mid-boost switch on the FiFine. Here is the high-pass filter enabled on the FiFine, but now we have the mid-boost mode on the FiFine, and here is the sound of the Podmic. But now I have both the high-pass filter and mid-boost mode enabled on the FiFine versus the Rode Podmic, and I would say that this is probably as similar as these two would sound from what I remember. I could be wrong. Versus the flat mode on the FiFine, which I feel like is a bit more of like a boomy, traditional broadcast sound. And I feel like the flat mode is a bit more pleasant on my voice in particular. But now let's get the Podmic out of here and just talk about some of the specifics of the FiFine. But when it comes to the build quality of the Tank1, it is absolutely on par with the Podmic. I know I just literally got the mic out of frame, but it's, just to bring it up again. And much like the Podmic, I should honestly just bring it back in at this point. It does have the plastic on the little knobs right here, and I would say it's a less good plastic than the Podmic, but I would say that's the only place that the Podmic really beats it. Otherwise, it is just as good, if not better. But I've actually been taking some accredited classes to become a psychic, so yes, I do know what you're thinking, and no, the windscreen for the Podmics do not fit on here, sadly. It's slightly too big. Unless, of course, you're obsessed with this look, like I am. But the build really is great on this microphone. I don't have any fear of dropping it or anything like that because I've already dropped it from about 6 feet and not even a scratch on it. So, it's awesome. Well, there's a little scratch, but it's fine. That is to be expected from that distance, I would assume. But as far as what comes with this microphone, you're pretty much looking at it. It's just the microphone, and it does come with a 5/8 to 3/8 inch microphone stand adapter, but it's honestly kind of weird that it does come with this since it does have a 3/8 inch threading beyond the 5/8 inch threading in the actual mount itself. But then I got thinking about it, and it's actually genius that they include this, and I love that they include this because there are a lot of 3/8 inch stands that just won't go that far. And when it comes to the specs of the Tank1, I'll just throw them up on the screen real quick and you can read through it if you're interested. If you're not, just, wait a second. But now I have the K669D plugged in, going against the Tank1. I was just curious how it would sound while I talk about some of the other things, but I will throw some more microphones against the Tank1 here in a little bit. But there is actually one thing that I do want to talk about when it comes to the specs of this microphone. It's the intelligent noise reduction. You see, it says it right there. From what I understand, it is only enabled when the high-pass filter is on. But when I heard that, I was a little bit skeptical because the intelligence part makes it seem like it's doing something behind the scenes. Now, I know I'm getting hung up on a couple words, but I do feel like it is just a bit deceiving if it really is just a high-pass filter, essentially. I'm not really trying to call out FiFine. I've just never heard of a microphone that can do this with it being an XLR and not a USB connection. Now I'm just going to test out the FiFine Tank1 in a bunch of different ways. Currently I'm using the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2 4th generation, and I will touch on this a little bit later, but the gain is about at 65 to 70%, but it isn't as high as the SM7b, so I feel like you will need some decent preamps to push this microphone, but a vast majority of interfaces nowadays come with great preamps, so it should be fine. And just so you know, I will be testing this mostly in flat mode, but I'll specify anytime I change it. But currently I am 5 inches away from the Tank 1. Now I'm exactly a foot away from the Tank 1. And now I'm 2 feet away from the Tank 1, which no one should talk into this microphone like this, but whatever. Now for the test that I'm the most curious about, because I've heard that it does very well with these, let's do some plosives. Now from 4 inches away, directly into the microphone, plosive test with some pickled peanutses. Pickled peanutses. Now I have the microphone on a slight angle. Plosive test with some pickled peanutses. Pickled peanutses. Now I have the high pass filter enabled, and I'm just going to try it out with that from 4 inches away. Pickled peanutses. Pickled peanutses. Now this is just to test out the sibilance with the mid boost mode enabled. Sibilance. Peanutses. Yeah, I feel like that quality is about the same. I should be able to just pass this off like I did this the same day. Let's do the proximity effect. So right now I'm about 6 inches from the microphone, and I'm just going to slowly work my way toward being right on top of it. And here I am right on top of the microphone. And now let's go into mid-boost mode. And here's how it sounds with the mid-boost on when I'm super close. It sounds a little sibilant in my headphones, but maybe not, I don't know. And now here is with the high pass filter on, and this is with the mid boost on also, and now this is just the high pass filter enabled. How does it sound? Does it get rid of any boominess? And now I'm back in flat mode. Should be a pretty seamless edit. Damn it, I'm wearing different glasses and a different shirt. Shit! Now this is a cardioid microphone, which means it is most sensitive in the front, least sensitive in the back. Now let's go ahead and do a polar pattern test and test that out. I guess technically this could work as a handheld test, even though I think it is silly when people handhold microphones like this, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone hold the Podmic. I cannot tell you how many times. So yeah, 2 birds, 1 stone. Let's do it. So right now I'm directly on top of the microphone, and apparently I'm losing my voice now. I don't understand what is happening, but I'm going to start turning it, and now I'm at 90 degrees, and now I'm going to be at 180 degrees, and now I'm going to continue this to the other 90, and now I am back on axis at 0 degrees. So now I'm just typing on a mechanical keyboard with red switches, and here is how this microphone rejects this sound if the keyboard is directly behind the microphone. Well, I don't know what's going on with my voice all of a sudden. Hopefully I sound better tomorrow, and I can finish it then. Now it's time to do a kitty purr test. Now we're going to turn the mid boost on. So now I'm in a completely untreated room with that color of walls and those baby bucks because I'm in my newborn baby's room. But the reason that I wanted to do this test in here is because it was really the only option right now, but additionally, it is the worst sounding room in our entire house. That's why you have kids, so you can give them your worst acoustically treated room. I'm so tired. But I'm actually recording this into my iPhone with the MVX2U from Shure, and I currently have it set at 70% gain. But I will say it does seem a little bit low for that, for this microphone in particular. And yes, I am hand-holding this broadcast-style dynamic microphone because I was a little too lazy to get a mic stand in here. It is very late and I am very tired, but hey, there's only one who can judge me. Andrew Scott. But in an untreated room, this microphone is going to sound a bit more clear and crisp, closer to my mouth, just closer to the sound source and everything, rather than introducing some room tone, which would, be if I held it out here, essentially. And this is going to sound a lot more reverberant, and you can definitely hear a lot more of the untreated room. Unlike this, which I feel like is probably the sound that most people are going for if you're looking at this microphone. But just to be as thorough as possible, this has been in flat mode. Now we have the mid boost enabled. Here's how that sounds. Now we have the high pass filter and mid boost enabled. Now we just have the high pass filter enabled. And what's left? Oh yeah, no, we're good. So this is back in flat mode. There we go. But just for a quick comparison, here's how the Shure SM7b sounds in an untreated room. If I put it out here, here's how it sounds, and if I get it a little bit closer to my mouth hole, here's how it sounds. Okay, now that iPhone/untreated room test is out of the way, I'm going to go to bed. So now I'm going to put the FiFine Tank1 up against several of its competitors, some that are less expensive, some that are more expensive. Just kind of varies a little bit, but I feel like all of them are within the same realm, aside from the SM7b, which I have to include in every comparison, essentially, or people get mad. But this is not the SM7b, this is actually the MV7X, just the XLR version of the MV7. And while I do these quick comparisons, just pay attention to the lower third, because I will occasionally change the filter on here. Right now it does have the mid boost, but just pay attention there in case I forget to say it in the video. But I'm actually not sure what price the MV7X comes in at. It looks like currently it's going for $200. Shure did do a price increase with the tariff situation that's happening in the US, so it went up $20, but it is usually $179, I believe. So as of this video, it's essentially $70 more than the Tank 1. Oh yeah, I should probably mention, I am going to be 4 inches away from these microphones in the entire comparison section, and I'm going to enable the mid boost right there on the FiFine as well as the high pass filter. And here's the Shure MV7X versus the FiFine, and now I'm just taking off the high pass filter. And, let's move on to the next mic. Why not? Actually, now let's move on to the next mic because we're back in flat mode on the FiFine. There we go. Hey, hold on to your peanutses for just a second, okay? I am including the Podmic on purpose because I feel like it should be in the comparison section, even though I did include it earlier in the video. But I just feel like the Tank 1 is essentially a clone of the Podmic to a degree. So it seems like it, should just be here. And also, I do want to include the windscreen that you can buy from Rode for like $20, which would essentially make these a very similar price. And we'll compare the sound of the Podmic with and without it to the FiFine. Now, I know I said this toward the beginning of this video, but in case you just skipped ahead to the comparison, the Rode Podmic little windscreen does not fit on the Tank 1. The Tank 1 is a bit too big for it. So here's the sound of the Rode Podmic versus the FiFine Tank 1 with the windscreen on the Podmic. And now I will just enable the high pass filter and we'll see how that sounds. There we go. Versus the Podmic, of course, with the windscreen on. And now I'm going to enable the mid boost on the FiFine. Why not? And here is the sound of that. And I feel like it wouldn't be a complete picture without disabling, the high pass filter. So let's do that. So here is no high pass filter with the mid boost enabled versus the Podmic. And wait, have we done all of them then? I think we have. So yeah. Now we're back in neutral mode versus the Podmic. And there you go. I know that wasn't the most professional comparison, but I'm just trying to zoom by the Podmic since it was already in this video. And speaking of Zoom, let's bring a product in from Zoom, the ZDM-1. The Zoom ZDM-1 has been known as one of the, cheaper microphones. It's been $50 for a long time. It's an XLR dynamic. However, it did just bump up to 70. A lot of companies are doing that. This isn't exclusive to Zoom. We just talked about Shure. It's just kind of a common thing. Maybe one day it'll drop back down to 50, but for now, it's 70. In the US, of course. It does seem like the ZDM-1 does have kind of a cult following of sorts, where it's just inexpensive and people love that about it, and it sounds good. What isn't to love about the AT2020 looking mic that's end address instead of side address? That's cool. It is midnight 35 right now, and I'm feeling a bit goofy. But the FiFine is back in neutral mode, natural sound, as the Zoom ZDM-1 has been the entire time, because it is only all natural. It does not have any filter switches. Now I have the Samson Q9X plugged in. It is just an XLR microphone. It does have the mid boost and flat mode, like the original Samson Q9U, which is a USB XLR combo mic, versus the FiFine Tank1, obviously. And currently both of them are in flat mode, and they are actually roughly the same price. I would say that the Q9X is usually slightly cheaper than the FiFine, but I will also say that I have seen the FiFine already on sale for like $109 or whatever. So they're essentially the same. Now I have enabled mid-boost mode for both of these microphones. I don't have the high-pass filter on the FiFine, but one thing that the FiFine does not come with that the Q9X does come with is a windscreen. So I will also put that on in just a second as I enable the high-pass filter, and then I won't have it enabled anymore on the FiFine. Wow, I'm wasting time perfectly. I mean, I'm not wasting time. I'm just giving great audio samples. Now I just have the mid-boost mode on both of these, and I do have the windscreen on. As you can see, it is a big microphone, it's a big setup, and it is a big windscreen. Now I am disabling mid-boost on the Q9X, and then I will disable it on the FiFine right now. Now here is both of these microphones in flat mode. And once again, yes, I did show this microphone earlier in the video, but I just wanted to throw a quick comparison in against the K669D, the $37 microphone. That is cheap. That is very cheap. But now I'm going to enable the mid-boost on the Tank 1. Here's how that sounds versus the K669D. And I'm going to enable the high-pass filter on the Tank 1. And additionally, I'm going to turn off the mid-boost on the Tank 1. Here's how that sounds versus the K669D. Hopefully that was fast enough for you. It should be pretty quick. And now we have the mic, the myth, the legend, the SM7b, going up against the Tank 1, which doesn't really make sense, but I have to include it once again because people get mad. I do have a DB over there, and I just figured this makes a little bit more sense because it's a little bit closer in price. Also, this is just a skin that I bought online. I do have the back port on, I just realized, so I won't be going through the filters with the SM7B. However, most people just leave it in flat mode and forget about it, so I would probably recommend doing that because the other modes aren't great. The SM7B is a great mic, but its one downside is the fact that it requires a lot of gain. For instance, I'm actually just going to show you what the mic level is actually at. I have them currently set at the exact same 70-ish% on the 2i2. So I'm actually going to take the normalization off of the SM7B for just a second, just so you can hear the difference in the gain level when they're both set at the exact same gain on the interface and everything, just to show you how much it does require. But even though I just ran out of space on that SD card, I guess I'm one camera guy now. Here we go. But even though it does require a lot of gain, interfaces are just very good nowadays. So you don't really have to worry about it too much, even with the SM7B. Well, a little bit with the SM7B. But with this microphone, the Tank 1, I would say you don't have to worry about it, even though it is going to require a bit more gain than, for instance, the K669D, or literally any of the microphones that I plugged in today. So something to consider if you're thinking about buying the Tank 1 is that if you have a very old interface that you have no interest in updating or anything like that, maybe look elsewhere, but you could probably get away with it. It would probably be fine in most cases. Now for the part of the video that is obviously the most important part, the part where I give you my opinion. I am using the FiFine SC1, the like $50, $55 audio interface during this final section. I just wanted you to hear it and see if it's good enough. I think the FiFine Tank1 is a good microphone. It's not breaking any molds. There are a bunch of microphones out there that are like this, but there are a few things that it does very well, especially at its price. And some of those things include that you can hit the microphone on accident. Sure, you can hear it and everything, but it doesn't have gross resonant frequencies or anything. And also, it does a very good job with plosive rejection, which is awesome. If you happen to be a person that has very aggressive Ps, you can just flip on the high pass filter switch and you're good to go. You can pee all night long. Hopefully you don't have to do that. That would suck. But also, if you're a person that needs a little bit more presence, a little bit more of that modern sound, or maybe you just have a very low voice, you can turn on that mid boost and there you go. I think the number one question that I would get in the comments if I didn't answer it here is, do you like it more than the Rode Podmic? And that is a definitive yes. I do absolutely prefer this microphone over the Rode Podmic. But the Tank1 and the Podmic USB is a bit more of a tie for me because you have the option of going USB and it does have that Rode processing that you can use versus, just going in XLR. So that is a nice feature with the Rode Podmic, and I guess it's just kind of different people need different things and everything. But in that situation, it is a bit more up in the air for me. But just to put a bow on it, I really do like this microphone. I think it's built very well, like its name entails. And I absolutely think it is worth your consideration for podcasting and spoken word applications. This mic isn't really meant for musicians. However, if you're looking for a microphone to track some guitars or something, it'd be totally fine. Not in a professional setting, but like a demo setting. And the BB star rating that I give the Tank1 is a 9.5. Yeah, I think it's a good mic. And actually, I'm kind of surprised by the SC1 and how it's been able to handle it. I mean, I am essentially at like 85 to 90% on the interface, peaking essentially at -18 to -12, I'd say, somewhere in there. Yeah, no, -12. And it sounds pretty solid though. However, if you are a bit more of a soft-spoken person, you talk a little bit quieter, I probably wouldn't recommend this microphone, but you could use it with like a booster or just a better preamp. In that case, I definitely wouldn't recommend the SC1 from FiFine. But thank you for watching my review of the Tank1. I want to thank the subscribers, and most of all, I want to thank the members, and thank you guys all for sticking with me this last little bit. I just had a baby, so I've been posting videos a lot less frequently, and it's because of that. But I will, of course, post a bit more in the future. Also, I do want to apologize for the different lighting that I used in this video. I'm kind of trying some things out right now, so it's a little bit inconsistent, but it's just for this video, essentially. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you audio nerds next time.